Another area, and you mentioned this just a second ago, with the sexual reproductive organs. And you're seeing this blow up across the board in these, hymns and row.com sexual wellness. And again, it's take more of these drugs, and you'll perform in bed. And it's an issue. Of course, you can say that this is something that is a more cosmetic almost issue that impacts your life in many ways. But you look at it from a different perspective, and you could say, well, that's a vasodilation kind of problem in a sense. How does NO help with that?
Well, nitric oxide is responsible for vessel dilation, engorgement, and sexual function. And we know, the PD-5 inhibitors, the Viagras, the Cialis, the Levitras of the world, work because they work downstream of nitric oxide. So the way this works, the way smooth muscle relaxation occurs is nitric oxide is produced, it diffuses into the smooth muscle, activates an enzyme called soluble guanylate cyclase. That enzyme converts GTP into cyclic GMP. And cyclic GMP is the second messenger that mobilizes calcium, leads to smooth muscle relaxation and vasodilation. So that's the cellular mechanism of vasodilation. And these drugs called phosphodiesterase inhibitors prevent the breakdown of the second messenger cyclic GMP, right? And so that's why it potentiates vasodilation. That's why you're warned against 4-hour erections, because nitric oxide turns this switch on, and then the PD-5 inhibitors prevent it from turning off. And so you can have an unsafe drop in blood pressure. You can have 4-hour erections, lead to necrosis of your organ, which is not a good thing, by the way. But, we now know that these drugs have been on the market since 1998, and only 50% of the men that are prescribed these drugs respond with better erections. And now, why are these drugs not working in 50% of the patients? It's because if their body's not making any nitric oxide, there's no cyclic GMP that's accumulating. So these drugs, there's nothing to work on. So what we found is that erectile dysfunction in men and women is a symptom of nitric oxide deficiency. It's not a disease of an overactive phosphodiesterase enzyme. It's a symptom of nitric oxide deficiency. But here's the bigger picture. If you have endothelial dysfunction in the sex organs and you can't dilate the blood vessels of the sex organs, you have that same dysfunction in the coronary arteries, in the cerebral arteries. You've lost the regulation of blood flow to every organ in the body. It's a systemic disease. It's the canary in the coal mine. So now what we're finding is if we can restore the natural production of nitric oxide or give our nitric oxide products that generate nitric oxide, we get vasodilation. We can improve sexual function by giving nitric oxide alone. But interestingly, we can take 50% of those patients who don't respond to the PD-5 inhibitors, combine it with our nitric oxide technology, and now those patients respond. And it's life-changing because it's all about circulation. It's all about blood flow. It's all about being able to regulate blood flow to certain organs, tissues, and cells upon demand. And that's what nitric oxide does.
If you were to give your recommendations outside of boosting nitric oxide, right? Because we get that that's vitally important, but what would be like your top 3 recommendations to living a healthy life? I always like to hear this, especially when people really analyze one area, because then you start to say, all right, let's get out of that area. What are your top 3 recommendations to live a healthy, happy life?
Number 1 would be intermittent fasting. Every day I do an 18-hour fast, and that's really changed kind of my hunger pangs, my body composition, the visceral fat just melts away. So every day I do an 18-hour fast. And once a week, I'll do a 24-hour fast. And usually once a quarter, I'll do a 48 or 72-hour fast. But that completely resets your metabolism. And that's simple to do. I say it's simple. Sometimes it's not easy for a lot of people, but you have to have the discipline to do that. But once you do it, your body just my body craves it sometimes if I go and I just, okay, I need to do a fast. Mm-hmm. The other is grounding, walking barefoot on the earth, because the earth is a big magnet, an unlimited source of electrons. And, biochemistry, as a biochemist, we're always counting electrons. When we run out of electrons, we die. So we need to improve the voltage and the circuitry and the electron flow in the body. And the best way to do that is to walk barefoot. And then number 3, what's 3? Drinking good, clean water. I think, the water we drink in municipal water supply is toxic. It's got drug metabolites. It's got fluoride, chlorine, chloramine. And so staying hydrated with good, clean, remineralized water. And I think that addresses really the basics of physiology. We need to hydrate. We need electrons. We need energy. And we need to change our metabolism. And intermittent fasting does that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that from someone with a scientific background because most of the times you're going to hear very scientific answers in that, yet grounding, fasting, and clean water. It's like nothing could be simpler. And you're not promoting anything there. You're actually not promoting food and like, getting outside. It's nothing expensive. I always say this to people because they have this misconception that to be healthy, you have to be rich. You have to, buy your health. When the reality is, if you take the free steps, you'll always have your health. Connect with nature, don't eat as much, drink clean water, remove toxins.
Get outside.
Right? Yeah.
For me, that when I get out of the sauna, I'll typically, some days I'll do a cold plunge, but then I go out and sit in my yard naked and watch the sun come up for 20 minutes.
That's amazing.
I live in the country. I don't have any neighbors.
Yeah.
They don't call the cops on me. But that sunlight, that first sunlight in the morning, and getting the electrons from the earth is, it's magical. It's the best. Obviously I come to Florida a lot, and one of my favorite things to do is stay on the beach and get up and be on the beach watching the sun come up.
It's amazing. The negative ions you get, the fresh air, the sunlight that regulates circadian rhythms, and all that is free.
I feel it. It's medicine.
Yeah. And you got a 700-acre cattle ranch out there. So you got a lot of land you could roam on naked if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's right. We raise our own beef. We grow our own vegetables. And so I know the food that I'm giving my kids and family is nutrient dense and free of any herbicides or pesticides and toxins. So it's, I've been extremely blessed and fortunate to be able to live this type of lifestyle. But, I've worked hard to do this.
Yeah, no, it's the proper lifestyle, I think, to go. You could live in a big city. I lived in New York City for a number of years, and it's wonderful for a portion of time, I say.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, it's like we got to reconnect with where we came from, which is nature, which is getting out there more. You have these amazing, advancements in technology and supplements that could absolutely serve as catalysts. But if you don't have the foundations behind it, you're kind of pushing a big boulder uphill that you're going to need to take a lot more energy to do so.